So where did the
hmm
idea for starting Justify come from?
Uh, the original idea for Justify came from somebody else. It wasn't my idea. And I didn't start it alone. I started it with partners. But before that, I took a year off. I took a sabbatical, and it happened to coincide with about half of it or so coincided with, the launch of, the global pandemic. And the pandemic was, there's so many negative things, and it was a tragedy for sure. For me personally, once my family was safe and everything, it did provide a utility for me, in so much as there was a lot of sort of anxiety about, okay, now that I'm not working, that sounds great, it's what I wanted, but then, what am I going to do? And, how do I stay relevant? And, being an entrepreneur, it isn't exactly like you go into the classified ads and look up, jobs or something. I didn't need one, but it is really challenging to go from, running a company to then not. But what the pandemic did is it stopped everything.
Mm.
And it turns out, if there's no deals to be looked at, or if there's no lunches to miss because no restaurants are open, your FOMO goes away pretty quickly. So
Mm.
that was helpful for me. And what I did during that time is ultimately reflect back on my first 18 years of an entrepreneurial journey and start dissecting, well, what was I good at? What did I like about that? What did I not like about that? How would I rank what parts of that were a success or maybe less of a success? And what I came up with for myself is, number one, I needed to engage in meaningful work. And not just because, I was driving everyone at my house crazy, which might be true, but because that is part of me. And, when you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it wasn't about, shelter or putting food on the table, but it was about sort of self-actualization and engaging in things. So I recognized that I needed to go out and do something and engage in that and do something meaningful. Number two, well, then what did I do? And I started analyzing what I really liked the most and what created value at scale in my last company was really, once I started tapping into a larger market and when I started leveraging technology. So
Mm.
when I went out and started entertaining opportunities to buy, to invest, to start, I was looking at it through a lens of a matrix I put together, and I wanted to find the biggest industry I could,
Mm.
and I wanted to be able to lead and do something innovative, and I wanted to do it with technology.
Mm.
So when some friends of mine who started a vertical SaaS platform, a sports tech platform that actually made their economic model was really to process payments, they're a fintech company inside of a software company. And I had read, and although I didn't fully appreciate or understand the power of how software companies can actually become fintech companies or financial technology companies, and they said we had a tremendous exit. They grew. They were processing over $4 billion a year. They had built this software and were acquired by a public company for nearly $1 billion. And they said that's a great ending. And I said, yeah, that was a very good ending. However, it took them a decade and a half, and it was really complicated and really expensive. And they said it doesn't need to be this way. In fact, we have a playbook, and we know how to do this for other software companies. So that really checked almost all the boxes of the things that got me excited and that I wanted to do. So we started getting together and whiteboarding out and talking about what was wrong with some of the finance and the payment industry as it relates to small business and other software companies, and how might we fix it? In other words, I was there learning, but also looking for the X factor, because I knew in my self-reflection that if you can align the right people and the right purpose and have an X factor, you're going to set yourself up, certainly not for a guarantee of success, but you might dramatically increase the likelihood.